Good evening, councillors and staff and officers, members of the public and anyone who's online. Welcome to tonight's Human Resources and Council Tax Committee. Before I start the agenda, as you know, we sent Carol an email to thank her for all her hard work and the fun and the laughter we'd had over the last few years with her. But I just wanted to put it on record again that we appreciated everything she did with us. So, okay. Right, item 1, apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. I've received no apologies.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting, pages 7 to 12. Can I sign them as a true record? Can I have a proposer and a seconder? Yeah, okay. And everyone agreeing? Thank you. I'll sign them in a minute. Right, item 3, declarations of interest. Can I remind councillors to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests or non-registrable interests, and the nature of it in relation to any item on the agenda. Councillor Guglielmi.
Yes, Madam Chairman, thank you. I might have an interest on A4, which is the fostering friendly policies. Not a direct interest, but I sit on a panel as County Council that deals with fostering.
Thank you. Is there any others? Okay, thank you. Item 4, questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38.
Thank you, Chair. There are no questions.
Thank you. Right, I'm getting through this quite fast. Item 5, report of Director, Finance and IT, A1, formal confirmation of council tax amounts for 2025-26, following the notification of the precepts from the major precepting authorities. And I'm going to hand that over to Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. So the report put forward for consideration this evening follows on from full council early this month, where the 25-26 budget and council tax amounts were approved. Similarly, the other major preceptors of this council's collection fund have set their own budgets and council tax amounts for the upcoming financial year, namely Essex Fire and Essex Police on the 4th of February and Essex County Council on the 13th of February. The committee is now asked to note the council tax figures set by our preceptors and confirm the total council tax amounts for the 25-26 financial year. I think it is also important to note that your confirmation this evening is dictated by legislative formulae rather than judgment or choice. Thank you.
Councillors, the recommendations are on page 13. Move, second. Do you all agree? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lewis, did you want to leave? Thank you. Item 6, apprenticeship update. It's a verbal update and it's from Debbie Ann. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to give you an update on Career Track, the council's apprenticeship training provider, and then I'm going to give you an update on the council's apprenticeship programmes. So I'll start firstly with Career Track. We have a total of 54 apprentices on the programme with us at the moment, and I'm really pleased to say that 31 of those are actually employed within Tendring District Council. We have other apprentices that are with other local authorities in the county. So we're working with Colchester and Braintree, Malden, and then we also work outside of the county within Suffolk and Kent, and we have apprentices in 2 London boroughs. We have apprentices at level 2, which includes customer service. We have apprentices at level 3, which includes customer service, business administration, team leader, public service, operational delivery officer. We're currently working at a confirmed success rate of 88.9%, which is for last academic year. And at this moment, I'm pleased to say that we're on 100% for the 24-25 academic year. So we've just got to get through to the end of July without anybody leaving early. So we're on target for that one. So that's career track. And then we have 16 staff members, actual employed staff members, completing apprenticeships with other training providers. And they include organisations like Colchester Institute, the University of Wolverhampton, Lifetime Training Group Limited, Ginger Nut and University College of Estate Management. And we've got apprentices from level 2 to level 6, undertaking accountancy, leisure and horticulture, multi-channel marketeer, business administration, associate project manager and the AAT, antisocial behaviour and community officer, people professional, and at level 6, the chartered surveyor and building control surveyor. Any questions?
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Guglielmi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Debbie Ann. This is one of the obviously treasured jewel of the council, which I've already had a conversation with the chief exec that this is going to be one of the safeguarded section or service that we have that will have to carry it forward into the next whatever it's going to look like. It's this is unique to Essex. I don't know if there is anyone else in the country that does this, but it started extremely well. I'm not going to give an example of leave an example that we've got that have come from career track, but there are several amongst our staff here, and the Grow Your Own, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, as you explain, you provide service to Kent and other places outside. It's just incredible how we've managed to set this up, and it's now 43 years, I think, isn't it? 42? 43, 42 or 43? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it's be 43, coming up to 43 this year. Yeah, yeah. But so well done. But I just really like to make sure that this is something that we don't forget and that is carried forward into whatever the authority will look like going forward. And well done.
Thank you. Can I ask what Ginger Nut is?
Ginger Nut are a provider with their head office in Colchester. They provide a lot of IT and marketing project management apprenticeships. They work across the country. So we have a project manager at level 4 with them at the moment. Yeah, it's a funny name, isn't it? Ginger Nut Media, they started off as.
Okay. Is there any other questions? No. Thank you very much. Are you staying with us? Good. Thank you. Item 7, report of the Head of People, A2, update on review of changes to the Chief Executive terms and conditions. It's page 25 and the recommendations are on page 27. It's a lot of recommendations, so I'm actually going to ask Katie when she's finished giving the report if she will read the recommendations out for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So members will recall that the change to the Chief Executive's terms and conditions of employment was agreed at full council on the 25th of January 2022 after having been to the HR committee. At the time, full council determined that there should be an annual review of the operation of the revised working hours arrangement. And so, therefore, the purpose of this report initially was to inform the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee of the findings from the review. which was conducted by a subcommittee of the Human Resources Committee at its meeting on the 8th of August in 2024. The HR subcommittee's findings can be found on page 26 of the report pack. But in summary, the findings were that the panel concluded that no alterations to the current terms and conditions were necessary at the time it was reviewed. The annual review process that was established in January 2022 should be discontinued, given that there was a separate annual appraisal process that's conducted by the leader. And the panel also expressed their gratitude for the post holders' valuable and positive contributions to the council. Since then, since that meeting in August 2024, the Chief Executive's terms and conditions of employment, as previously described, so since the committee reviewed those, Essex devolution and local government reorganisation has been announced. Members will be familiar with obviously what devolution and local government reorganisation is, so I won't go through that, but I have included some detail around the proposals for Essex within the report, and that they can be found on page 26 of the agenda. So therefore, the report also seeks to notify the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee of the leader of the council's proposal to reinstate the Chief Executive's full-time working hours in light of the significant demands of devolution and local government reorganisation. The proposals to amend the Chief Executive's working hours also reflect the discussion and the decision of a recent full council meeting where it was determined that work will continue to ensure that the district of tendering is in the best possible position should devolution and or local government reorganisation go ahead. The leader considers that the full-time working arrangements of the Chief Executive are fundamental to this, and therefore this committee are asked to endorse the leader's request to reinstate the CEO's full-time working hours and note that a special dispensation in the application of the authority's flexible retirement policy will be required if agreed. A recommendation is also to be made to full council that consideration is given to the leader's request, special dispensation for the application of the flexible retirement policy is granted, reinstatement of the Chief Executive's full-time hours are introduced as soon as possible, that the annual review process is ceased, and that the established leader's appraisal will be utilised as an alternative, and also to record the council's thanks to the post holder. And in line with the chair's request, I should just take you through those formal recommendations, if I may. So it's recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee note and endorse the request from the leader of the council to reinstate the Chief Executive's full-time working hours in light of the demands of devolution and local government reorganisation. Subject to A, above, notes a special dispensation is required to alter the terms and conditions of employment of the Chief Executive due to the special nature of the role in relation to the Council's flexible retirement policy and its application, which reinstates the Chief Executive's full-time working hours as soon as is practical. And C, subject to A and B, recommends to full council that full council considers the request from the leader, having been supported by the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee, to reinstate the Chief Executive's full-time working hours, agrees to grant the special dispensation to the council's flexible retirement policy and its application to the Chief Executive in his role at this time due to devolution and local government reorganisation. Subject to 1 and 2, agrees the reinstatement to full-time working hours as soon as is practical, that the annual review, as determined by full council on the 25th of January 2022, be discontinued on the basis that the exercise of the review is unnecessary, given that there is a separate annual appraisal process for the post holder undertaken by the leader and the thanks of the council for the valuable and enduringly positive contribution of the post holder to the council be recorded. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Guglielmi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Katie, for your summary of the report. I'm delighted that the leader has recommended and has made this request because for the simple reason that there are two reasons, in fact. One, we all knew that the reduced hours were never going to be reduced hours. You look at the times that you get emails from. I remember having a conversation with a monitoring officer about this, and we were quite sceptical about the reality of that ever actually taking place. And B, it's now that, and I'm also delighted that the chief exec and the leader have got the job of drafting the first skeleton of the proposal, which has got to be in by less than 4 weeks now. So they've really got their work cut out, and we know that they're both going to dedicate their time, efforts, and ensure that the best possible deal happens to tendering. So I am delighted that it's come in front of us, and we're going to recommend to full council that he's reinstated. And yeah, it was not before time, but I won't say any more of that. So I'm very happy with that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Gary? You okay? Sorry, Mrs. Hastings.
Thank you. I've supported Head of People with regards to this report as well, and I can say that obviously the main drive has definitely been the impact on the Chief Executive's hours since the devolution paper came out in December. And as Councillor Guglielmi has identified, you know, our Chief Executive is leading the work at the moment to pull together the first draft of the interim plan to be approved by all councils. And I do know that, you know, it's not just the drafting of the words that takes up the time, it's also the conversations as well. So, yeah, this is, it was obviously, we didn't anticipate this at the time when Ian first requested his flexible retirement, but and also as well to support the fact that full council in January asked the chief executive together with the leader to represent this council in those discussions. So that was just to sort of support that, and it is already having an impact as well on, you know, officers. So, you know, just to support the report.
Thank you. Sorry.
I can come back. I presume that timing is the essence here. We got full council extraordinary meeting on the 11th. Is there enough time for this to go there now? Is it just one item, council, is it?
I think the plan is that this will go to the later meeting in March. So it will still go in March, but just a little bit later, because I think we're just pulling together the extraordinary meeting for one single item.
Thank you, Ms. Hastings. And I think it's, I think I've already asked this, but and been asked to have it on record, is there is no way, there's no mechanism to have this backdated, because he has been working, as Lisa's just stated, since Christmas, ever since the LGR proposal came out. So he's been putting the hours in like there's no tomorrow, and it'll be unfair for, if we can't do it, we can't do it. But that's, I'd just like to understand if that's at all possible or not.
Thank you, Councillor Guglielmi. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be possible on the basis that obviously Ian's terms and conditions are agreed by full council, and obviously, you know, they are, as we stand at the moment, his terms and conditions are 27.75 hours per week in terms of, you know, his contract of employment, although we've had the discussion here this evening that that's not the case. Obviously, all we can do is seek to put this all, you know, as a committee, all you can do is put this recommendation to full council that these changes are implemented as soon as is practical. Lisa, I don't know if you want to come in there.
The other thing is, as well, is as the report identifies, we have a flexible retirement policy, and that says once you go to flexible retirement, it's permanent reduction in hours, and that applies to all employees. So it could only take effect from when full council approves that dispensation to that flexible retirement policy. So yeah, we're obviously trying to get it through as quickly as possible. It's only a few more weeks.
Madam Chairman, yeah, I thought that was the case, but I thought I'd still try, and I'm happy to move recommendations as stands.
I often wondered if he ever really knew the meaning of flexible retirement, but never mind. Is there any other questions? Councillor Amos.
Yes, just a comment really. I'm very pleased that Ian's actually leading on the devolution thing, and I couldn't think of anybody better to actually do the job. And I know he'll have the best of for tendering residents in his thoughts. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, totally agree. Councillor Baker.
Chairman, I'm quite happy to second the recommendation. I think it's almost a tribute to Mr Davidson that he's been asked to lead because of his expertise and his knowledge and his commitment. And I think we should publicly recognise that. And you know, having been in the town hall when there's been meetings upon meetings upon meetings, I don't think we actually realise, or some don't realise, the amount of work that's already started and being done to put us in the best possible place. So I'm quite happy to second it.
Okay. Sorry, Carlo, did you propose? Yes, thank you. Is there any other comments? No? Do you all agree?
Agree.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Right, item 8. Yes, thank you. Report of the Head of People A3 Pay Policy Statement 2025 to 2026. It's pages 35 to 54, and your recommendations are on page 36. And that's over to Katie again.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report is to present the Council's draft pay policy statement for 25-26 for recommendation onto full Council for approval and adoption. Members of the committee will recall from earlier years that the authority has a statutory obligation to produce an annual pay policy. The Human Resources and Council Tax Committee have historically overseen the preparation of this document, of the draft document, and then for recommendation onto full council for approval and adoption. In terms of the draft pay policy statement for 25-26, which is in front of members this evening, this outlines the council's remuneration approach, including its pay for chief officers and also lowest paid employees, and it looks at the relationship between the differing pay levels. It also outlines our adherence to national pay grades, that's the NJC, ensuring a fair and transparent framework for remuneration across the council. The policy also looks at incremental progression based on service length and performance that's established across the council. The document has been reviewed to not only in line with our statutory obligations, it's been reviewed to ensure that it remains legally compliant, reflects best practice, and also maintains a high level of transparency for our staff, but also for the residents of tendering. and changes applied to the draft can be found within the document, and they're highlighted in red text to make it easier for members of the committee to see where we've made updates. I'd like to just point out that key changes include the application of the latest pay award, our gender pay gap reporting figures, and I will talk a little bit about those in a moment, if I may. Inclusion of various additional payments, including market forces, acting up, etc. And that, again, is just for greater transparency. We've looked at what others are doing and we want to reflect best practice. We've also referenced protected pay arrangements. So as we go through organisational change, members of the committee will be aware that we have our organisational change policy. It's been to this committee, but this this information has now been pulled through to the pay policy statement in more detail. And also the statement outlines the authority's policy position on special severance pay, which we have to have. Again, that's a statutory requirement. I just want to touch on gender pay, as I say, and just looking at our figures, our reporting figures for 24-25, the mean hourly rate for males is 81 pence higher than for females. This means that males within the organisation, and this is looking at the whole organisation in its entirety, it means that males earn 4.8% more on average than females. However, to balance that, the median hourly rate for females is 36 pence higher than for males, and this means that females earn 2.5% more at the median level. And I just want to explain that in a little bit more context. There are currently slightly more chief officers that are male, and so that obviously has an impact on the mean figure that's in front of you. Obviously, in terms of the median calculation, that doesn't weight that factor, and therefore overall it kind of reflects a more balanced overall rate. So it's just that's, you know, there's no significant differential. It's just it looks at the data in its entirety when we're looking at mean. So the ratio of female to male at quartile level is in keeping with the composition at an overall organisational level. And Joe's going to talk to you about that in a little bit more detail shortly as we take you through the workforce report. But I'm pleased to report to members of the committee that our data demonstrates that there's no material disparity at each pay level within the organisation, particularly when viewed in the context of the UK average of 7%. So we are, you know, comfortably, we can say that there is no material disparity in terms of our pay levels. So in terms of recommendations, the committee are asked to endorse the draft pay policy statement for 25-26 for recommendation onto full council, and also formal recommendations can be found on page 36 of the report pack, as Madam Chair says. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Thank you, Kate, again, and thank you, Madam Chairman. Just an observation, really, and I think I know the answer to this, which is the pay policy is pretty much similar to other organisations subject to the NJC, which I thought that was. And the difference on the median and the mean is, I totally understand the fact there's too many males at the top. Yeah, basically, if you go further down, there's more females than there's males, which is evens it out, you know. So Lisa feels very lonely up the top there. But it's the difference is that historically, how has that been? Was that something that we've not been monitoring for a long time, or is it something quite new?
Thank you, Councillor Guglielmi. So there is a statutory requirement for us to monitor our gender pay gap, and we've been doing that since 2017 when the legislation came in. In terms of the reporting, there is, you know, because we're part of NJC terms and conditions, there is very little differential when we report each year, to be honest. As I say, there's that slight differential because, as Lisa pointed out, she's, you know, representing the females at a very, very senior level of the organisation. But that is the only differential. That's the only thing that's slightly. But if you look at the median, it gives a much more balanced picture.
With the new pay grades, surely that must be taking out the lower SJC scales. We must be sort of deleting a few as the pays are going up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there was the lowest SCP was deleted, I believe not last pay award, the pay award before that. Where we are now, obviously the pay award for 25-26 is yet to be agreed, but I would draw members of the committee's attention to the fact that obviously national minimum wage does have an impact, and that will come into play 1st of April. Obviously, we have a very slight bit of room in terms of the NJC pay spine currently, but it is minimal. The headroom that was built in with the 24-25 pay award, obviously it will no longer be maintained come 1st of April. And so the conversations that are happening nationally in terms of national employers and national unions, they're very aware of that proximity to, national minimum wage and maintaining that headroom that we've always had in terms of our, lower paid staff. So Richard and I attended a regional pay briefing a couple of weeks ago, and the discussion was very much focused on that. And then there'll be a number of regional pay briefings, and then, as I say, all of that information and feedback will be brought back to the national employers and national unions before a decision is made, but no decision. Normally, the unions will put in their offer, which they have done, and a counter offer is made by national employers. National employers at this stage, as I say, are still going through that pay briefing. But you're right, Jane, sorry, just to come in there.
Yeah.
It could well mean that we have some differences at the bottom of the pay spine, but the challenge will be to maintain that differential further up the pay spine too. Thank you.
I think as we've stressed so many times, to leave it this late to put in the pay award negotiations when everybody's trying to set their budgets. I don't think it's probably about October before we'll get an answer again, isn't it? So that doesn't make it easy, does it? Is there any other comments? Questions? No? Can I have a proposer then, please? Councillor, and seconder? Councillor Guglielmi, and do you all agree? Yeah? Thank you. Item 9, report of Head of People, A4, fostering friendly policy. It's pages 55 to 64, and the recommendations are on page 56, and I think it's Jo.
Thank you so much. It's with great pleasure that I present to the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee the development of the Council's fostering friendly policy. If you've taken you through the report, it's quite shocking to realise that in Essex there's currently over 1,000 children in care and facing significant disruption in their lives. So there really is, I think there's an onus on all of us to be looking at how we can support increasing that number of foster carers so that the children don't have to be displaced too far from where they live. It is, I mean, I've been doing some research around this about foster carers, and it does, it's quite emotional because it is what they do, and what they do to support those children is so fundamental. So as a council, what we're saying is we recognise the values of the vital contribution that foster carers can make to the lives of children and young people. And we understand to become a foster carer, you need flexibility, you need the support of your employer to be able to do that. And so what we wanted to do is, and it's, is a commitment from us, is to provide that sort of organisation that supports
our employees to become foster carers and make it easier. It's quite a challenging process to go through, but what we want to do is to make it as easy and supportive as possible. Therefore, this policy looks at offering pay, time and support for people who want to become foster carers, and also promoting that, through our own mediums, but also through, sort of our sort of the wider community as well. So what we're saying is we want to help recruiting more people to become foster carers and for people to remain as being foster carers. Whilst I was researching, we haven't got, researching, whether this policy was going to be sort of worthwhile. I looked, we haven't got any records at the moment of how many staff are actually current foster carers, but I did know somebody who was quite vocal, who sits not too far from me, who I shared the policy with to get, their input, and I put their comment, so it's not in the report. And I think they were saying, what a really positive initiative and a policy this is for us to introduce. So I'm really pleased that, this could really be changing. We can have some sort of impact on changing lives. So that's really good. So without further ado, I mean, the policy is quite straightforward, and part of it is wanting us to be a foster-friendly employer. And so sort of shout from the ceilings that we do support that. As part of developing the policy, I've been working with Essex, got there so been talking to them and to the network, who acknowledge and so you can register to be a family foster. They have actually reviewed the policy, and I'm pleased to say it's a bit of a chicken and egg who we agree at first, but they have confirmed that, if we adopt this, that we will be complying with their requirements and we would be recognised as a foster-friendly employer. So, without further ado, I mean, the recommendation, you happy for me? Or do you want, yeah? You happy with them? So it's recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee approves and adopts the Council's new fostering friendly policy and the organisation's commitment to becoming a recognised fostering friendly employer. That is quite a mouthful. Requests that the leader of the Council to delegate responsibility to the portfolio holder for partnerships to approve initiatives that promote fostering and becoming a foster carer. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand there's not many councils that have adopted this, or not many people across the country that's adopted this policy. So, is that right?
Yes. So I was in contact with the fostering network, and currently there's only, in the whole of the UK, there's only 212 employers. And within Essex as the whole, there's only 6 who have signed up or in the process, and that includes us. And there's only 3 other councils in Essex. So, we're a minority, but I think that's a really positive that we can start and, really sort of pioneer this and sort of put forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you very much for your report. The position I have at Essex, I'm a member of the co-parenting panel, which changed name from corporate parenting panel to co-parenting as a direct request from the young people that they wanted to be felt a lot more less formal and more puts the duties on those who kind of keep a check and see the progress of the effort. There are currently 1,134 children in care. That fluctuates between, it never goes down below 1,000. And when you see these numbers, people have sometimes you lose that beyond that number is a child, and beyond that child there's someone that's looking after them, and it says the report actually touched on it, just how complex it is to put yourself forward and to attract people to, and there's a desperate shortage of foster parents and foster carers for all the obvious reasons. So I'm delighted that this council is actually one of the first ones to become foster friendly policy towards its employees, and hopefully that will lead the way to others. And I would be delighted when next panel meeting to confirm that tendering has installed this. And I do know the other two councils that you talked about, and they're as good as us, but not as good. But yes, I'm delighted that this is in place, Madam Chairman, and I'll be very, very happy to move that because something very close to my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a no-brainer, isn't it, for us to approve this? Some years ago, and it's a long time ago, I was a foster carer, no support from anywhere. So it is a vital thing, you know, people that do it, worth the weight in gold. So I'm quite happy to second the recommendation.
Is there any other questions? No, you okay, Gary? Thank you. Right. We've got a proposer and a seconder then. Do you all agree? Thank you very much. Item 10, report of the head of people, A5 workforce update report. That's pages 65 to 74. And the recommendations are on page 66, but they are to note. So I think that's Jo again.
Thank you so much. Obviously, we regularly, the purpose is to provide the members of the committee with an update on the current staffing statistics, and we do this sort of on a regular basis. At the time of writing, we had 521.2 full-time equivalent employees, and that equates to 790 workers. That includes our casual workers and learners. This is made up of 439 full-time and 351 part-time. We're obviously, we talk about about the Grow Your Own initiative, and it's so encouraging from what Debbie Ann says about how many different apprenticeships that, we are really showing that we're demonstrating that is actually we're doing all the different ones and it's so exciting to hear the other courses and different ones more that are coming on as we go. So that is obviously increasing. We do have challenges to fill some positions of specific skills. So those sort of remain, but there are measures that we're putting in place to try and address that. Looking at the report, if you've read it, is that what you'll find is that our quality data has largely remained consistent over the reports as we go. And in some cases, I'm really positive. That's really positive, and that's really good that is, particularly gender balance and the gender pay gap, which Katie touched on, and the age distribution. However, what we noted is how disappointing is the number of employees reporting a disability or identifying as non-white British has not increased, and that's quite concerning. The HR team, as we talked about, that we've got the new iTrent system, which we brought into play in April. And part of that is what we decided at that point was that we wouldn't transfer old data into the new system. We wanted to make sure that we give the opportunity. The way that we were reporting data was different, the classifications were different. So we decided to sort of basically start again and make sure that our data had a cleansing process. So staff were asked to complete the sensitive data aspects on their employee site. So we have been encouraging over the last few months, well, nearly a year now, it's going so fast, encouraging employees to complete that sensitive data. And that is what is now giving us the figures that we've got. My sense is that our disability status, the data we've got, I think is underreported. From the experience I have got, and the talking that I was talking with staff, we've got a lot more staff than has been reported as having a disability. And I think that's twofold. I think it's one, whether people feel confident putting themselves having a disability, and two, whether they actually consider themselves have a disability. And I think that's something quite personal, isn't it, to say I've got a disability. So I think there is something in there that we've got to do, is to work with staff to show them what's the importance of us having that data, but also feeling confident in the data. So that's that key. What I do believe, though, is that the low numbers of employees recorded as non-white British, I think it does, I think that probably is reflective, and I think that figure is, more reflective of what actually is happening with us. But as it does, it reflects the demographics. But I think there is challenges that we need to do to be addressing that. We are looking at proactive measures of encouraging people to apply and coming into the district. So we're looking at targeted recruitment. We're making sure that we are, encouraging with our language and where we're advertising. And part of, at the last Human Resources Tax Committee, there was the endorsement of the People Strategy for 2024 to 29, and part of that was looking at that collaborative working with our partners, but also putting emphasis on our equality and diversity, and really looking at that. So to further support that work, what the council is introducing is inclusion and diversity champions. So what we've done is at the staff briefing in September, I did a presentation to all the staff and invited volunteers to come, to be part of that group. And I'm really excited that we're going to be having our first meeting in a couple of weeks' time, where people have self-selected, they volunteered, and it's quite nice. We've got a mix, a complete mix of people with coming from all different walks of life, with all different interests and challenges. So what I'm hoping to do is, we will, be looking at having initiatives. We'll be looking at working with they'll be role models, and also. So what I'm intending to do is at next and future meetings, I'll be updating, we're sharing what ideas we've got, what we planned, and hopefully we will look at seeing that figure increasing. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, thank you. I'm pleased that you're picking up on people that are not reporting a disability, and do they really understand what what they've got or what their disability is? And I can bring in personal experience. My daughter has Crohn's disease. It's a disability. But so many people think, well, actually, no, it's not. It's, you just get on with it. And I'm just wondering, as you said, we need to encourage people with things that don't show to come forward and say, yes, actually, I have got a disability. So.
And I think maybe it's the language we use, because if you talk about things that affect you on a day-to-day, the definition of a disability affects you day-to-day, you'll probably say, yes, that's true. But if you sometimes there is that stigma feeling, having to say, I'm disabled. And it might be something we change the wording on our, so that people don't feel, because, I'm dyslexic. I wouldn't class myself having a disability. I wouldn't put that, but actually be quite useful for my employer to know that for that statistic. So we might need to look at other ways of gaining that information as well. So, thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Just a comment, really, to link it to the previous report. See, we're well outnumbered by females as opposed to males on both sectors, the full-time and the part-time, which is really, really good to see, because it wasn't like this many years ago, was it? It was a lot different. And also the gender, it's really, really good news. The one thing that I've also picked up is the absenteeism, which is compared to the national average, it's about 3.65 days as opposed to national of 5.7 days. And again, I remember when I first arrived in this organisation, there was off the scale, and Gary will remember that, and we sat in a committee, and I remember we were discussing that very reason, and there were like 13 or 14 days average, I think, that was per employee. And so we've moved on massively from that. So excellent report, very, very good, and it would be great for us to note it.
Sorry. Can I just, what's interesting about, I do feel a little bit that we may be a little underreporting in our sickness as we're going over to the new system. But what was quite encouraging is we've now got more detailed reasons for absence that weak people can report. So we can really drill down and see what the reasons is and address those. And so that I think that's so important. It's no very well as just monitoring, just logging it. We actually have to do something about it. And so we can now be more proactive with that reporting. And it is working with our managers to make sure that they are accurately reporting, but it is really positive. And I think we've probably got much more of a, we're working, the managers are being proactive in supporting short-term and long-term sickness. So I think there's some good work going. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or anything? Thank you. Item 11, report of the Director, Lauren... No, it's for noting, sorry. Noted. Report of the Director, Law and Governance and Monitoring Officer, A6 Human Resources Committee, and arrangements for Statutory Officer and Non-Statutory Chief Officer appeals. It's pages 75 to 86 with the recommendations on page 76. Lisa Hastings, that's your one.
Thank you. It's quite a lengthy report, which I'll take you through some of it to explain why this matter is before you. So back in September 22, the handbook for chief executives was updated, and at that time letters were sent to the head of HR and the monitoring officer in all organisations to make sure that our constitutional arrangements were supporting the different employment terms and conditions for the chief executive. There is also a conditions of service for local authorities chief officers, and that refers to the other two statutory officers, being the section 151 officer and the monitoring officer, and says that in the relation to appeals, we should adopt the same, council should adopt the same process as they do for the chief exec. So we, over some time, with the different aspects of the Constitution which relate to this subject matter, we have updated different parts so far. So far we've updated the officer employment procedure rules, which made sure that we were covering dismissal and disciplinary processes, which is to be determined by the panel, your subcommittee panel. But the one thing that we hadn't looked at in detail was what happens if there is an appeal from a statutory officer. Now, you would hope you would never get to this situation, and if we did get to this situation, then something's gone extremely wrong. However, the reason that full council asked myself to look into this is we should always make sure we have the process in place in case we did need it. So, having done the research over time, the reason why the report is quite detailed is because I basically had to pull different bits of information from different places to show actually what we did have and what we didn't have. So the appeals procedure, which actually sets out that does not apply to the chief executive and the other statutory officers, and it says there that human resources would advise on the best course of action to take in those circumstances. Well, no disrespect to my colleagues that are sitting around me, But it's not good governance to be deciding there and then what's the best thing to do. It's better to have a process that which we can follow and we know what it is. So, and you know, to be fair to other colleagues, there is nothing, I don't think, more daunting than have to go through an employment process with a statutory officer or an officer or management team. And in a previous role, I have done that, and it is not a nice situation to have to go through. So what I am proposing, which follows the suggested approach in the Chief Executive's Terms and Conditions Handbook, is that there is a appeals subcommittee established, and that appeals subcommittee, would follow a similar format to what you've already got for your HR subcommittee, which essentially is the leader or deputy leader, the chair or vice chair of the HR committee, and a named member of the opposition from the HR committee. So my proposal is, and having consulted head of people and the officers that this would apply to, they feel that that makes sense because you've got a format that you're already using, and they wouldn't have been involved in the process up to date if there was an appeal. Then the other thing that we went on to consider, and this I did this in consultation with our chief executive, is that the chief officer's handbook says that you can have members involved in appeals or not. So that is a discretion. So we gave some consideration to that together with the head of people, and it was felt that if we did not put chief officers, now you've had the report this evening on the pay policy statement, chief officers tendering has defined as your 3 statutory officers and those other directors on management team. So it's not, doesn't apply to any of their deputies, their assistant directors, it is just the core management team. We felt that it would be appropriate for the other directors on management team to go through the same appeals process, because otherwise they're going to have other officers determining their appeals, and as you can appreciate, that's not very comfortable for anyone to be in. So what I have done with this report, and as it's presented to you as well, I've set out some terms of reference for a appeals subcommittee. I've made it quite clear in that terms of reference that nobody would sit on that committee unless they'd undertaken quite detailed employment training for that purpose. The reason being, this would be the last point before it went on to an employment tribunal for those officers. So that's what is proposed, and again, you know, I can't reinforce how we hope we're never in this situation. And so what you have here is a recommendation to yourselves on page 76 of the agenda, that you note the outcome of the review undertaken by the Council's monitoring officer as requested by Full Council. So Full Council requested that a little while ago. And that you recommend to Full Council that the Human Resources Council Tax Committee's terms of reference be amended to include the determination of an employment appeals for chief officers, and those functions be delegated to the Chief Officer Employment Appeals Subcommittee. So if I just pause there, the reason we have to do that first is we have to give those functions to a committee. So full council has to give them to a committee. So it has to come to you first, but then be delegated further down to a subcommittee, because the members of that subcommittee would come from this committee. So then we're requesting that full council agrees that a Chief Officer Employment Appeals Subcommittee is established with the terms of reference as set out in Appendix A, and then the necessary amendments being made to the Council's constitution to be highlighted in the reference report to full council. So again, just to pause at that point, what that would mean is if the committee was to approve this evening, it gets referred on to full council with a covering reference report, and in that report I will highlight what needs to be changed in the constitution to reflect this. And then the next point of the resolution recommendation, jumped then into a resolution. Recommendation is that political proportionality would not apply to the Employment Appeals Subcommittee on the basis it's not a committee which meets regularly. If it did apply, if we had political proportionality apply to it, when it comes to your annual Widdicombe review, it would be taken into account as seats where, hopefully it's never used. So, and it follows the same process as you've got for the subcommittee as well. And then subject to A and B above, that the committee authorises a delegation to the head of people to undertake a review of the council's human resources, policies and procedures in consultation with the head of paid service to ensure that they're up to date and consistent with this appeal process for chief officers as set out. So that is my summary of quite a long report. It was like putting all your markings down, like all your calculations down in one report. So the recommendations are on page 76 and happy to answer any questions.
Your mic's on, Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It's not a question.
It's the Googly Army, sorry.
Thank you. I completely agree with Gary's sentiments, and to add to that, to add injury to the wounds. There was an appeal subcommittee when we first arrived in this authority in 2007, and together with the regulatory committee, they were both disbanded because they've not been active for over a year and a half, 2 years. Sadly, here we go, the wheel is turning and we're going back in circle. this is a very, very useful thing to have. You want to hope that we're never ever going to be in a position to use that. But I was involved in a previous authority where I was a member of between 2013 and 2018 when it got dismantled in a very, very messy grievance process, which again, there was no recognised process in place. And had this been there, that would have saved the taxpayer a huge amount of money, as well as all the stress and anxiety to both members and officers involved. You know, so this is long overdue. You could only uh, give this job to someone like Lisa to come up with such a comprehensive report in front of us, and also I don't think there's anything else that's been left out. The one question I have, Lisa, is that on the training, eventual training that members of the committee will need to have on employment laws and things, and briefing on any particular, you know, and again, I stress, we want to hope we're never going to be there, but that's the previous example I used. We had to extract information like pulling teeth, and that's something that I'd like to understand. What, you know, is there going to be comprehensive freedom for those members to have access to all the information that's not deemed confidential and privileged or whatever you call it? And that's my, just, you know, I'm sure that Lisa will reassure us, but that's something, having been there, I'd like to have that assurance. Thank you.
Just bear with me a second. I just want to find the bit in the report which sets out what the process is before you even get to an appeal, especially for statutory officers. So, picking up on Councillor Calver's point, from memory, and I should know this, but I think it was 2015, new regulations were put in so that with regards to statutory officers, a new process was adopted nationally through legislation. In fact, that it was to give statutory officers more protection with regards to employment rights, because it's a tough job sometimes. And nationally across the country, there were examples where it was becoming quite political. So new regulations were put in where there has to be like a normal investigation, which is what you would have, but then that goes to a panel, and that panel has an independent person sitting on it. So that, and then you have the second process, which is to go to the subcommittee as well. It might be the other way round, but that we've got a two-stage process essentially, and then there's a recommendation that goes on to full council. Now I'll use the monitoring officer as an example because it means it's less personal about anyone else. But if full council was to make a decision to dismiss me, that's a full council decision. Only full council can do that, but they can only do it having gone through this statutory process. And that's where members get access to the report and all the advice, everything. So where we were at tendering was we've done all of that. We've put all of that in place, and that's been in place for quite some time. What we didn't have was, and if there was an appeal. So you can have full council determining an appeal, which with my good governance hat on, I thought that would be very, very hard to achieve. And, you know, bearing in mind how important the decision is in employment law, it would be better that it was done by a subcommittee, and it would be in Part B, and you would be determining the appeal, just like officers do for lower level staff. So same process.
Sorry, thank you.
No?
With regards to once you get, that process is on page 78, 79, it very clearly, once you get to the needs that you need to convene the panel, what length of time will they have to consider the information? Because there'll be quite a lot there to digest. And again, I refer back to the example I gave where we spend 2 weeks in a hotel, go home at night, leave all the evidence behind, then come back again. It was horrendous. Hopefully not never going to be there, but
I'll reply first, and then maybe if people can come in. I would hope you didn't have an appeal that lasted that long. I don't think anyone would want to go through that. With any appeal process, doesn't matter what the subject matter is, you should get to the point where you've got matters that are in dispute, so they, essentially was that, at this stage you're going to be looking at, is the dismissal unfair, but Katie can come, but I really hope it's not 2 weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Guglielmi. So if we look at our standard appeals procedure for employees, they will have to submit any appeal within 10 days of the decision, and then the panel will be convened at the earliest opportunity. But obviously, certain information has to be submitted in terms, within a given timescale, and that is to ensure that obviously everybody has suitable time to prepare. So it would just, it would be the same in terms of this arrangement. It would allow sufficient time for all parties to prepare.
When the terms and conditions for the Chief Executive were amended back in September 22, the covering letter that we received was highlighting that there had been situations across the country where they'd gone into quite convoluted employment law issues with some statutory officers, and the damages were increased to the local authorities. So the local authorities had to pay out more in damages because they didn't have the proper process in place. So, essentially this is get the process in place so that you don't have someone like me saying, oh, I can't appeal.
Are there any other questions? Can I have a proposal then, please? Councillor Amos? Second? Yeah? And do you all agree?
Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That is the end of tonight's meeting. Thank you very much.
Well done, Joan. That can't have been easy.